the Lipedema podcast. We are your hosts, Shell
and Tiana. And today, our special guest is Kylie Bradley. She is a lymphedema therapist, a clinical nutritionist, and a health coach. Kylie, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, girls. It's a pleasure to be on this afternoon.
It's always good to have professionals who work in the field and are there to support us to come on and have a chat. Like, it's really valuable to our community to find all these unicorns out there in the community. So thank you. And the first thing,
like unicorns, actually, because we seem to be very difficult to find.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So how did you come to learn of lipedema?
So I probably seriously would have heard about lipedema probably 5 years ago when I completely niched my practice into focusing purely on lymphatic work. So I've been a massage therapist for almost 17 years. And whilst I've probably over all of that time treated women with lipedema, I probably didn't actually realize that's what it was. And really, I didn't really hear of the term probably until around 5 years ago when I niched into lymphatics and then started getting more women into the clinic with lipedema. So, I decided I used COVID, the tragedy of COVID imploding everybody's businesses, to actually use it as a time to redirect my business into focusing on everything that's lymphatic focused. And so the knock-on effect was that I started to see more clients with lipedema.
That is awesome. So in your lymphatic training, did they have a focus on lipedema?
No, and that's really interesting. So if I take you back to doing my diploma of remedial massage, I did it back in 2006 to 2008. And the college I was at, we had options to do electives as part of the training. And so I heard about lymphatic drainage massage. And we learn in the diploma about lymphatics back then, more just around working with healthy lymphatic systems. And my interest in lymphatics came about because of my own personal journey, having had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a lymphatic cancer. And so I'd never heard of the lymphatic system at this point. So it sent me on this big pathway of obviously researching and finding out more about it. And it's how I've ended up where I am now. But certainly back in that training, there wasn't even any mention about lipedema. And it's really only been since I've done more additional training. Again, it's very much focused around lymphedema. A lot of the training is always focused around lymphedema, but now we're starting to hear a little bit more about lipedema within that.
That is awesome. It can be so, even for us as warriors who have lipedema, the way we all come about learning about this condition is just so diverse, isn't it? So someone who's in the industry still hadn't heard about it until you had that time to really focus in on the lymphatic system.
Yes.
Yeah. And you would have been seeing it all the time. It just didn't have a name.
And it's been really interesting because since I really niched the practice 5 years ago into lymphatics, initially I was seeing a lot more of my lymphedema clients, but actually as time has progressed over these 5 years, I would say probably a third of my client base would be lipedema ladies. So there's a real shift, and I've kept my practice. I'm just interested in lymphatics, so I haven't niched even further down within that. I want to work with anyone who's got, fluid and issues like that. That's just my jam. So, I see clients with lymphedema, with lipedema, post-surgical. The post-surgical stuff's just exploded in the last couple of years as more women have decided to, make the decision to have surgery, which, back to even 2 years ago, a lot of clients, it's not on my radar. I can't afford it. I know it's too invasive. I'm not interested. Whereas a lot more clients are now more open to it.
So true.
Yeah, the more that everyone's being educated on it, it's really expanding that knowledge, the knowledge base there. So your professional life has taken on many different forms. Can you give our audience a brief overview of your interests and offerings that support lipedema clients?
Yeah, so I have two sort of businesses running side by side. So I have Lymph Movement Studio, which is located here in Adelaide in a suburb called Parkside. And this is where we do all of our hands-on work. So we do manual lymph drainage here. So we see a lot of our lipedema clients here for manual lymph drainage, whether that's as part of conservative management or whether it's pre and post-op preparations as well. And we also have a lymph press compression suite. So we have a a private room where our clients can come and have compression. So we have a lot of ladies that will use that as either, some use it purely as standalone and replace MLD with coming in for compression sessions. Some use it as an adjunct to have between sessions. So a lot of our clients don't want to invest the money in a compression pump. And it's also a way in which they can try it out beforehand if they are thinking about buying one for home. But it also, from a cost perspective, as you girls will know, it is an expensive condition to manage. Like, everything costs a lot of money. Manual lymph drainage, you're with a therapist. It's our personal one-on-one time with you. So the cost of that is more expensive. Compression garments, oh my gosh, they're crazy. The price of compression garments, everything sort of adds up for you. And unfortunately, not recognised as a medical condition in Medicare. So there's no funding unless, of course, you've got lymphedema with your lipedema, and you can get access to, compression garment subsidy schemes, which are now sort of nationally around Australia. But it just becomes very expensive. And so I wanted to introduce particularly compression into our practice here so that we could provide another option, a more cost-effective option for our clients as well, in a supervised environment as well, so that they're looked after. And we even have a call button in the room so that we like to give people their personal space, but if they're, freaking out because, everything's feeling a bit tight and compressed, then they can tap out and we come on in and help them out. So they're the main things. We also measure for compression garments here in the clinic as well. And then from the nutrition side of things, I have an online web presence. It's Love Your Lymph is my website, which is all about online nutrition programs. And so I tend to keep nutrition out of my hands-on practice at Lymph Movement Studio and have shifted it all onto online because there's only so much time in my day. So sort of separate the two things out.
I've found, like, with my own journey with this, there are certain things that you need face to face, and meeting with your massage therapist is something that is so valuable. Yet learning about, nutrition and things like that, you can read about that and you can instate things on your own time and you can do telehealth calls. But that lymph care, that you need one-on-one support for. So that's brilliant.
Yeah. And I found that, like, I had to, whilst doing nutrition clients amongst my day of hands-on therapy seems like a good idea because it gives my body a bit of a break, I've got to switch brains a little bit. And I found that a little bit challenging. But also, like, if I'm in the clinic, it's the only place I can be hands-on. So if I'm at home, I can't work on my clients now. I used to have a home practice, but closed it because this clinic got so busy. And so I need to be able to utilize my time to the best. So when I'm here, I need to be in hands-on roles, whereas outside of here, I can be online. So yeah, that's sort of how everything kind of blended over the last couple of years.
It's a great way to diversify your business too, like getting all your hats, being able to wear them and be sustainable for you as well.
Absolutely. And, I'm not getting any younger. I'm 50. I'm about to turn 51. And, like, as a massage therapist, having worked for 17 years, I didn't come to this, as a 20-year-old. I came to it in my mid-30s. And so also coming into it off the back of having cancer. So, and I also have diagnosed with epilepsy. So I have a chronic health condition as well. So, I'm not the most healthy specimen for doing hands-on work full time. So, I knew at some point that I wouldn't be able to do hands-on work and certainly deep tissue remedial work for a long time, which is why I started to transition into nutrition work back about 10 years ago. I started studying. It took me 8 years to do my degree because I was doing it part-time while I was working and running my business and stuff. But I was like, I need to have that transition so that I can still have that longevity and still use the skills and the knowledge that I have to be able to share with the lymphedema and the lipedema communities. Yeah, so it's really important to me to be able to share and educate that knowledge at a point in the future where I can't actually be hands-on.
Yeah, and they work beautifully together.
Absolutely.
They really work, that body work and with nutrition. Like, it's such a good marriage, isn't it? It's really.
And you often get asked, even over the years of being a massage therapist, you would get asked a lot about nutrition type things. That's not our wheelhouse. There's no training involved in your diploma of remedial massage to do nutrition stuff. It's only if you do additional training. And I'm very conscious about working within my scope of practice in both areas is, particularly you don't want to step outside your boundaries, I guess. And so it's about making sure that you're helping people as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking more into nutrition, do you have some basics that everyone should do? things that you encourage people to focus on?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that I would say is it's really important to find a dietary approach that you think you can actually stick with. I mean, within our lipedema community, there's probably two main, like we talk a lot about keto, we talk a lot about low carb, and there's good and bad in both. And really you have to find what's going to work for you. I think there's a lot of challenge with keto. There's actually different versions of it. I guess my preferred version of keto is there's a guy called Will Cole who wrote a book called Ketotarian, which is essentially a veggie or a pescatarian version of keto, which is using a lot less. There's not the meat sources are fish sources, and I find because that sort of more closely mimics something like a Mediterranean style diet, it's a lot easier to stick with. And I think keto can often be done poorly. We often choose the wrong sorts of proteins, the wrong sorts of fats, or we're eating them in combination in the wrong way. And so I think that we can get lost a lot in keto. And I've had clients who are absolutely yes to keto and absolutely no to keto. So I very much feel you have to think about what dietary approach do you think you can stick with long time, because ultimately it doesn't matter what you choose, it has to be sustainable and fit in with your lifestyle. And that's, I think, the mistake that we all make, whether we have lipedema or not, is that we try and, this is what's meant to work. But if it doesn't work for you with your family or your personal circumstances, well, what will work? And I think one of the other things I think is really important is to not change everything all at once. So I always like to adopt a one meal at a time approach, I think. And it's challenging because we're in this fast-paced society where we're hoping for the quick fix all the time. Social media doesn't help that because we just see more and more and more. And, you get a before and after, and okay, that after could be 18 months or 2 years down the track, but then you see it instantly and you feel like, okay, that could be me as well. And unfortunately, and it's a challenge, I think, for working in the nutrition space, is people still come to it hoping there's some magic pill or quick fix, but actually it takes time. And you should be prepared, I think, if you're going to go down a nutritional path, whether it's with a clinical nutritionist or a dietitian, is be prepared to be seeing them for at least 3 months, because within whilst different cells in the body have different turnover rates, essentially your whole body is turning over every 3 months. So to really see the benefit of any sort of intervention that you're going to put into your life in terms of nutrition, you need to actually give it at least 3 months to get a full idea of how much it's impacting you or not. So, and the other benefit of taking it step by step and meal at a time, you can actually see, okay, you can monitor then for how are you feeling on these foods when you have, as opposed to making this, like, it's the same when we'll talk about supplements down the chat, but if you supplement with everything, how do you know what's working?
Yeah.
Be prepared to slow down and take it one step at a time. And so I'm always a big fan of starting with breakfast, because like a lot of people aren't eating breakfast. I know Kimmy Caddy's talked before about, and she spoke about it at the Lipedema conference last year, about, that timed eating and shifting that to earlier in the day. And I think she gave an example of same calorie intake, but taken at different times of the day, and how when it's earlier, there was weight loss, but when it was later, and that makes complete sense, from how our bodies work. You have to be able, we need our calorie, we need our energy source during the day when we're active. We don't need it. And it's a challenge, I guess, for us culturally, where dinner is considered our main meal of the day, and yet it's the last. We don't need calorie intake, that level of calorie intake that late in the day. So I think, working on one meal at a time and also looking at trying to time meals earlier is really important for lipedema.
Remember that old saying? It was like breakfast like a king, and like dinner like a pauper or something?
Yeah.
It's like a king, lunch like a queen, dinner like a pauper. Yes. And
Yeah.
it makes complete sense.
It makes sense. And you need to break that fast.
Well, we used it traditionally until sort of the time of Mr. Kellogg. We used to eat dinner leftovers for breakfast in the morning. So this whole idea of breakfast cereals and stuff only came along with the lovely Mr. Kellogg and him trying to sell all of his breakfast cereals. So like that's a very modern introduction. One thing I will say as well, just that's come to mind is when you're working on nutrition stuff, bear in mind, nutritional science is the youngest of the sciences. So we've only understood vitamins and minerals existed since around the 1920s. So you've got to realize that out of all the sciences, this science is only 100 years old, and we're still discovering, and we see new stuff coming out all the time. So I think it's a challenge for us as nutritionists as well, is trying to keep abreast of what the latest research is and what new things they've found out about, because it's a new science in terms of the length of time different science areas of science have been around. It's like the young baby of the science world. So there's a lot of new things being discovered, and a lot of things get changed around. And I'm a child born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and around that low fat messaging, that I still see my mother and father, who are in their mid 70s now, still low fat, and like they just trying to get over that eternal, which we now realize is not the way to go. So things change, and so be aware that in being a new science, a lot of nutritional information changes on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about, because nobody's wrong. It's just evolved.
Yes.
Like it's not wrong. It's just that we know more now, and so we've
got more information.
Yeah. And with that low fat era, because I remember like Shell and I have had lots of conversations about the eras in diet mentality and stuff. And the low fat one really sticks in my brain at the moment, as I'm on a lifestyle weight loss journey, a postpartum weight loss journey, and I'm tracking my calories. And like, I never adopted the rhetoric of calories in, calories out, because I was so burnt by the low fat era that I was like, no, fat is good, fat is healthy. But then I'd blow out my calories because I was having too much food overall. And so it's like, fat is good, fitting it into your overall limits of your the
energy you need
within the energy that you need for the day. And so I'm only just starting to connect all these dots as I track everything that I put into my mouth, which I hate very much, but it's serving me really well now at the moment.
It's good data to have.
It's really good data.
Yeah. It's good. And, keep in mind to use these things as tools. Like you said, I mean, you girls have spoken before on the podcast a lot about disordered eating that happens within like the Lipedema community. And so we don't want to get too obsessive about it. But if we look at it from a viewpoint of curiosity, okay, I'm going to track this for the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and just see what happens. But also not just track the food, but track how am I feeling like within my body? What am I noticing about my digestive system? As a nutritionist, we talk to people a lot about their poo. So, what are you noticing when you eat this, this, and this? And just looking at it from a level of curiosity. And then once you find this right balance, then get rid of the tools, so that you don't become obsessive about it. I mean, I'm preparing to go to Spain to walk the Camino in June. And so after 16 years, I decided to buy a watch, and it's to track my step count each day to prepare me, but it's also tracking things like my sleep. And I've just become really obsessive now about the lack of deep sleep I get versus REM, which I get too much of. So you can get a bit obsessive with these things. So it's important to just look at them for a short period of time, use them as a tool, use them with curiosity to gain some information so you can make more informed decisions.
Yeah, 100%.
It's also like once you start like tracking with your calories, you'll see what that meal looks like. Oh, that's what a serve of that looks like, and that's what a serve of that looks like. So you're not always going to need to record, because you'll have that memory of that's how much a serve is, and that's how much I put in my bowl.
Yeah, it's truly been invaluable, but it can't last forever.
Yeah.
But it's also really interesting because like portion sizes really got blown out. Like I look back at pictures of my mum and dad, like during the late 60s, early 70s, and like the little sticks. But then you have a look at a 1970s dinner set, and you will notice that a dinner size plate is actually much smaller than today's standard. And, when we grow up with this, I grew up with a finish everything on your plate scenario.
Yes.
Which I'm sure is as well. And that plate was a whole lot smaller than it is now. And if you're used to filling a plate and you don't realize the plate got bigger, then you can see how you can blow out on your calorie intake in the day.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. And the finish everything on your plate, I come from an Italian household, and the food was the most beautiful food.
And food's about love.
And lots of pastas and rich sauces, and as if I wouldn't want to finish that food. So not only was I finishing my food gratefully, but I was asking for seconds because it was so delicious. Okay, so you were speaking, you mentioned the quick fixes earlier in terms of weight management. Or so how do you feel about the GLP-1 agonists coming onto the market, or any of the weight loss medications, pharmaceuticals that we use as tools sometimes?
Yeah, and I think that's what you said there is important. Where they can be used as a tool. From a personal viewpoint, as someone with a chronic health condition that's required medication all my life since I was 11, I am very anti taking anything that isn't absolutely necessary. So, as from a personal viewpoint, I want to be taking medication wise absolute minimum things that I can. But I recognize that these things can be used as tools. And so some of my clients, I've probably seen more in the last, I would want to say maybe year to 18 months, there's been an increase in clients coming in that are on these GLP-1 agonists and, all the various brand names of them. But a lot of them are using it as part of preparation for surgery has been my experience. So the idea being to get the BMI down, which don't even get me started on BMI because I've written a whole book for it, but it should never be used in clinical settings. But it's really, I can see its use as a tool, and I have no judgment about anybody choosing that. I'm very much love to meet people where they're at. And if that I'm combined very much because of my history with epilepsy, I can't rely completely on natural medicine to keep me where I'm at. I have to use mainstream medical. You have to use medication. So using that as an example, there's some we have to combine. That's my personal opinion, is you take those things when you need them to get you to a certain point. I think the challenge is that sometimes they're being prescribed for, quite often, because we talk a lot about it, the creating satiety and cravings for, stopping that overeating. But I have to say, in my experience, a lot of my clients don't have issues with being overeating. So it's interesting when it gets prescribed. I get it for weight loss, for preparing for surgery and stuff. But if someone's not got overeating as their issue, they're not getting cravings, they're not, then I'm not quite sure why you would choose to use it. I guess that's where I have a question mark on it.
Mm.
And I also what is the intention in terms of what sort of fat loss are we looking at? Because as we know, lipedema fat is not metabolically active, so it's not responding to diet and exercise. So then these are clearly just going to target, well, this is me thinking it through. It's targeting that, non-lipedema fat, which if you're somebody who has additional non-lipedema fat to lose, then great. But if you're not, and most of your fat is lipedema fat, well, is it going to have an impact? I don't know that we have the research on that, because remember, they're being used off-label. So they're being used off, as I like to call it. They're designed for things like, diabetes management and other scenarios. We don't really know what the impact is for lipedema women on taking these things. I mean, for a lot of medication in general, we don't know the impact it has truly on women anyway, because a lot of research on all medications is actually done on men, because they want standardization to get their results. And if you throw female hormones into the mix, you don't know how much that's playing into it. So, with variety of medications, not just in this space, when we're talking about GLP-1 agonists, we actually don't know what the impact is on the female body, because a lot of this isn't researched on female bodies. So you do become a bit of a guinea pig in a way. We find out what the outcome is. I mean, I used to be on a seizure medication that seemed quite effective, but after it was in the marketplace for 12 years, they discovered people were losing their peripheral vision. So then they were taking people off that drug and no one's prescribed it anymore. Even with the best of research, a lot of negative symptoms don't come out until they're actually out in the real world being used by regular people. And I think we also we don't know the combination of these drugs in combination with what you might already be taking, because none of these are tested in combination. So I think certainly use them if they're it's a conversation to have with your GP who's going to be prescribing it, and they're obviously going to take into consideration anything else you might be on. But I'm certainly no, absolutely don't take them. I think they have their place and they can be used short term to really help, whether it's surgery preparation, whether you're trying to drop a certain number of kilos. A good example, after pregnancy, trying to drop that postpartum weight. I get that they would, because I mean, the mental health aspect for lipedema ladies is like crazy. I've lost count of the number of women, new clients sat there who within 10 seconds are crying in front of me because they feel heard finally. I'm like, yes, you've been told by your GP for like the last 20 years that you're fat, lose weight. And that's all they have to offer you. And you've tried everything. You've done every diet. You've tried every exercise program and nothing changes. It's nice to be somewhere where you can actually be heard and understood.
Yeah, and you have someone working alongside you that can help tweak those little things, the little behaviors and like the little things in your diet that could be optimized. But we don't see that from so close where we are. We're just trying to survive day to day.
Absolutely.
Having someone like you on board that can just say, you could do this little one thing, like just little one thing, and then you can do a little one thing
add
next.
onto it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think as I was certainly early on when I started my nutrition career, I was like, oh, could do all the things, got to give them all the things. But actually then you swiftly realize you give people too much stuff. And then sometimes you think, geez, I only gave them one or two things to do. But I'm like, yeah, but that's in with awareness of the whole storm that's going on in their life right now. Like all they can manage to do is get breakfast sorted. Like, okay, well, that's where we're starting. Like you have to, like, it has to be done with that overall picture. And I think that's one of the benefits in seeing nutritionists and naturopaths is we have more of a holistic approach. So we look at all of your lifestyle factors as opposed to, and it's not fully the case, but often when you end up in your more mainstream medicine, they're looking at it very narrowly. Our mainstream medicine is very reductionist, so it wants to get down, whereas natural therapists, we will look at the whole thing. We're going to ask you questions about things you don't even think are related to your condition and what you've come to present with, because we want to get an overall picture and see how that web interconnects with each other.
Yeah, mainstream medicine is good at the acute presentations.
Yes.
You guys, work with us from a complex.
And we're also looking to get to the root cause if we can. I mean, obviously, in the condition of lipedema, we can't reverse that. We don't know what, we're still discovering genetic components. We're still discovering we can't cure this as such, but we can manage this condition. But ultimately, we will always be looking to get to the root cause of perhaps other things that might contribute to inflammation in the body, which again could be that trigger for more lipedema fat. I'm very much focused in what could be in your life could be inflammatory, whether it's diet, whether it's movement patterns, whether it's relationships, like what are all the things that are potentially causing inflammation in your body. We want to reduce those to reduce that likelihood that you're going to lay down more lipedema fat.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's looking at the mechanisms at play and supporting those, supporting those systems.
Yeah,
love that. So speaking of inflammation, is there any efficacy in some supplements to deal with that sort of thing, and like that don't impact on your lymph health or impact positively on your lymph? Like, is there anything? Because we spoke about pharmaceuticals. Let's switch to supplements now.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that I'm always focused in as a nutritionist is gut health, because what we're swiftly realizing in the last probably 5 years, we've seen such an explosion in the understanding about how the gut microbiome is impacting our overall health. And so making sure the gut is working efficiently is probably where myself and also naturopaths would also look at focusing in that space as well. And just for clarification, the main difference between a nutritionist and a naturopaths have herbal training. We don't as nutritionists. So if you
that's really interesting.
Yeah, so naturopaths we do pretty much the same training, except the naturopaths do herbal training as well. And I couldn't do that route because the amount of bad tasting herbal liquid herb remedies I've had from naturopaths over the years is like so hence I went the nutrition route. So I guess for me as a nutritionist, we look at vitamin mineral supplements. The main thing I would look at, I use a bit, would be something like partially hydrolyzed guar gum, which is pH, you'll hear it referred to as PHGG. So it's a fiber, prebiotic fiber. So that can be really good at balancing out GI issues, whether they be, IBS type constipation, diarrhea pictures. That's probably one of the more common things I use. To be honest, I don't have one specific thing that I would recommend for the lipedema community in itself, because when I'm one-on-one with people, it's a bit more complex. Whilst we can be a bit broader with the dietary advice, I think, you've got to take into consideration what else might be, or what other medical stuff might be going on for people. Because one of my biggest bugbears is the easy accessibility of nutritional supplements over the counter, because there are certain medications people are on that should not have certain herbal combinations. And I had a client mid last year, and she was listing off what conditions she had, and she had what supplements she had been taking, and what she was taking ashwagandha, which was like recommended by a friend. And I just had this niggle in the back of my head. I don't think she should be taking ashwagandha. And I just sat with it all day. And so when I got home, I got online, because I was like, no, something's really bothering me about that medication and ashwagandha, and they shouldn't be in combination. So I sat down there at 10 o'clock at night and saying, hey, I just had to reach out to you because you told me this during this consult, and I really need you. I don't think you should be taking this. And she came back the next morning and she said, had no idea. I'll stop taking that straight away. And that's really important, because so many people, oh, well, I'm on this and I took that. And actually, that might be okay for you if you're not on medication or don't have any other conditions going on, but you have to be aware that some particularly herbal stuff can have interactions with medications that you're taking. So yes, I mean, vitamin and mineral supplements tend to be okay. I mean, there's a little bit of a problem at the moment with excess B6 being taken at the moment, so that's resulting in a lot of neurological issues. But generally speaking, most of your nutritional supplements are fine. But yeah, you need to be careful about what supplementation you're taking, particularly if you're on medications, and be careful about what you get recommended by your friends.
Yeah, and even like podcasts like biohackers and stuff, they're like, you must be having magnesium. Like, most people are deficient in vitamin D, B vitamins for energy. Like, you sort of are getting saturated with these messages. Omega-3s is a great one as well. Like, it's those kind of things that they feel like they're making a blanket statement that everybody needs to be taking those, or getting from enough of them from their diet. It's either or, and you're looking at your diet going, well, am I getting enough omega-3s? I don't know.
It's really hard. It's hard to get, just on that, it's really hard to get enough omega-3s in your diet these days, because things like fish that should typically be high in omega-3s are now high in omega-6s because they're grain-fed. So you've got this mass farming, which is why they sort of recommend all the wild-caught stuff that's more likely to be omega-3 rich. But if you're buying, from the supermarket, you're buying mass-produced, and though they spread grain out to feed those fish, so actually what should be rich in omega-3 becomes rich in omega-6. And omega-6s are pro-inflammatory, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. That doesn't mean omega-6s are bad. It means they have to be in the right ratio. And unfortunately, we're kind of heavy in our Western diet on omega-6s, which can lead to more inflammation. And so I think really getting to the crux of what your particular foods are that you might have intolerances to or reactions to is really important, so that you can minimize inflammation in your body.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Everything needs to work in balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, as we wrap up this discussion for the nutrition side of your expertise, do you see a trend specifically in your lipedema cohort of patients that lack with their nutrition? Most of them lack in their nutrition, either in practice or maybe in knowledge or education?
I think what I see is a lot of confusion about what's the right dietary approach. That's, I think, again, coming back with just the excessive information. I mean, the intervention of the internet was wonderful, but at the same time, now we're in this age, and add social media into the mix, where we are so bombarded with so much information now, we don't actually know how to make a decision.
Sure.
And so this is where, and again, I think this is where, because we're seeing a lot of comorbidity health issues with lipedema as well. So I think those need to be taken into consideration. And so that's where I think if you have been struggling with whatever you're doing from a nutrition perspective, if it's not working, I think that's when you want to start looking for somebody to get some help, because I think there's only so much information you can take in, and we're not all, like, everyone's an expert in their area of expertise, and most people are not experts in nutrition. So if you're struggling to make sense of it all, then you kind of need to seek out somebody that you resonate with, that can actually help you with your making the right decisions for you around what's going to be best in your particular circumstances. And I think keto is one of those that that is done quite often really poorly. And I think that's where people get the idea that keto maybe isn't for them, because they've just done keto wrong, if that makes sense, without being judgy about it. Because there are many variations of keto, and I mean, keto, I have a love-hate relationship with keto because it is what we consider a therapeutic diet. It's meant to be used as a short-term dietary approach, and it was actually designed for epilepsy. So it was designed for, and it has absolutely, I've done a lot of research in this space being epileptic. So it's amazingly effective at reducing seizures. So I see it as from that lens of being this really good diet for epilepsy. And so now that it's being introduced for all these other things, I'm like, I can't get my head around it slightly, because I see it as a therapeutic diet and not as a long-term strategy, a diet that you're on forever. And that's where I guess something like Mediterranean diet is actually more sustainable long-term. But again, it doesn't suit everybody. You have to, be okay with trying something and it not working and trying a different dietary approach. Like I think that's something that, and be okay with it taking time. I know that's hard to say because
It's very hard.
most of the community has had many years of waiting to finally get a diagnosis. So to be told, take some more time to work out what works for you in terms of nutrition, you're like, you've got to be kidding me. I've spent the 25 years wondering what's wrong with my body, and now you're telling me to wait some more time to work this out. But yeah, it is the process. And I think, and I think I feel like we get a bit of demonizing of carbohydrates in the lipedema community, when there's a difference between complex carbohydrates, so things that are fiber content, so your fruit and veg, and your refined carbohydrates. So it's really the refined carbohydrates that we're trying to cut down on. So I think that in itself is quite powerful if people can just get their head around there are different kinds of carbohydrates and not all carbohydrates are bad.
And I think also not all food is created equal. So even like if you go through the health food aisle, all the keto bars, the keto drinks, the keto chips, they're just a chemical shitstorm. But yeah, they're great if you're in a hurry and you need to grab something, but they're not something to base your nutritional
Your
needs
entire diet on. Absolutely. Yeah. And these things are okay. And 80-20 it, people. 80-20 it. Eat well 80% of the time, be okay with the occasional blowout. Like, we just get so strict with ourselves, and it's like, there's no fun in that. There's no joy.
No, and that's just going to trigger any disordered eating issues that you have and exacerbate those. So yeah. So let's move into your lymph side of your business now.
Yeah.
What is your approach to new patients? Like, how often do they come to see you?
Yeah, so we get new patients on a regular basis, combination of new clients that are either they've had a recent diagnosis and they're looking to include MLD as part of their self-care. A lot of people come to us because I heard about it on social media. So it's one of the positive things amongst the lipedema community is the amount of groups and stuff and things like your podcast educating people about lipedema. And sometimes some people are self-diagnosed and they don't feel a need to get officially diagnosed because and when you talk to them, they are definitely lipedema. But sister got a formal diagnosis, or I saw a picture online and that was my legs. That's a common thing that women talk about. So we often get people who are newly diagnosed looking for I guess education around what they can be doing and to get treatment and look at garments and MLD and compression therapy. And then we also get a lot of pre and post surgical preparation. My conservative management, I try and I might see people initially once and then I'll see them 2 weeks, and then I try and get them out to sort of every 4 to 8 weeks after that. Because it depends how proactive somebody is in their own self-care. Someone's really proactive, I don't need to see you regularly for MLD, but if you're less proactive, then come in more regularly. But then in pre and post-op care, for example, we might see people a couple of times a week, but it does depend on people's finances as well. So, and that's why I'm always myself and the other therapists that rent space off of me here, we're all lymphedema therapists. So we all have experience working with lymphedema or lipedema. And so we know both these communities are underfunded. Both of them are dealing with conditions that require a lot of expensive kit or treatment. And so we've got really good at working out how to navigate that to make sure it's as cost effective for people as it can be.
That is awesome. So speaking of the cost effective side of things, what is one or two things that the community can do at home to support their lymphatic system in between visits?
I'm a big fan of breathing. And I know that seems ridiculously simple, but you'll be surprised. Almost every woman who comes into my clinic is not breathing deeply. So as women, we tend to get stuck in shallow breathing, chest breathing, breathe all up here. And I top and tail my MLD sessions. I start and finish them with diaphragmatic breathing. And it's really interesting. The first breaths, the start ones, a bit shallow, not great. And nice, big, full belly breaths once they've calmed their nervous system down. And I'm a big fan on people like reconnecting with how to diaphragmatic or belly breathe, because we have a sac in the abdomen called the cisterna Kylie, and it's spelt differently to my name, but clearly I was meant to work in this space because there's an organ. And it's tiny. It's only about that big. And it collects the fluid from your abdomen and your legs. And when you breathe in, it gets squished. And when you breathe out, it empties. And it empties up behind your sternum up to your terminus up here. So breathing is when we breathe and use our diaphragm, we're actually encouraging our lymphatic movement. We actually encourage that movement from the lower body to the top towards the heart. So particularly if you're with lipedema legs and you do still have some fluid component in terms of that, breathing is something that is going to help, more correctly, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing is going to help move the fluid from the lower half of your body up. And it's like costing you absolutely nothing. So my top tip that I tell my clients is when you're waiting at the traffic lights, waiting for the lights to change, check in with your breathing. And if you're chest breathing, while you wait for the lights to change, just belly breathe. And
I love that.
like,
Yeah.
it's just a way of hooking it onto something. It's like, and body brushing as well. We think about people like, oh, you think about body brushing? And I'm like, I actually think it's really good. It's really good for skin health. It's really good for circulation, as in blood circulation. And it's good for lymphatic health. And again, from a lymphatics viewpoint, you only need to do it twice a week. So I wash my hair twice a week. I body brush twice a week. So I hook body brushing into hair washing day. So while the quickly body brush, jump in, wash my hair. So if you can attach some of these really easy self-care tips onto something you're already doing, then it's easy for it to become a new part. And, body brushing, it's the cost of a body brush.
Yeah.
And I guess the other one is hydration.
Or something.
The other thing is hydration. So many people are underhydrated. People are not drinking enough. And when we're underhydrated, dehydration can often be mistaken for hunger. So if you think you're eating and actually really you're just thirsty, well, that's another way in which you can be consuming additional calories that you weren't intending to. And our body is predominantly, like, it's about 80%, depends. I've heard 70%, I've heard up to 90% of us is water. Who knows? Somewhere in that field. So if we are water, then we need water. And, things like digestive issues, so many people are dehydrated. So our body will pull water out of the bowel to keep a fluid balance in our body if we're not hydrated enough. So, if you're somebody who's getting constipation on a regular basis, my top tip is you need to drink more. Like, if your body will adjust. So those sort of things are simple, they're quick, they're very cost effective that you can be doing. And just hook them into something that you're already doing. I struggle with hydration myself. I spent 15 years working in hotels and now working with people one-on-ones. Your periods of time where you can't, I'm not at a desk where I can drink all day. But one of my things is I've got hydration salts in my first bottle of the day, and that gets that down because they're quite tasty and I like them. If you don't like plain water, add things to it, whether it's hydration salts, whether it's cucumber or strawberries or whatever you like, just throw something in there to make you drink it. That's really helpful to get that hydration level up.
Yeah, great tip about putting something in your water if you don't particularly like water. That's not my problem. I actually really enjoy water, and so I can't relate to that. I know that I know when speaking to a lot of people, they're just not interested in drinking water, so I think it's a good tip. Kylie, we've had the best time chatting with you. Before we go, the most important question we have is, where can the lipedema community find you?
Yep. So face-to-face, you can find me in Parkside, Adelaide. Online, you can find us at lymphmovementstudio.com.au and at loveyourlymph.com.au, and on the socials of those two on Insta and Facebook.
Fabulous. And we will have that all in our show
In the
notes
show
as
notes,
well, so that anybody listening to this episode, just pop in the show notes and you can connect with Kylie. Thank you so much for your time today, Kylie.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Amazing.
Thank you for joining us.
Take care.
Bye.
The Lipedema Podcast 2025 is powered by Elegance Lymphatic Care. Lipedema and its symptoms vary from individual to individual. The opinions and advice voiced in this podcast are of a personal nature and used for educational purposes.
Please take away from this podcast what resonates with you, and please see your GP or preferred specialist for diagnosis and healthcare. We are Shelley and Tiana from the Lipedema Podcast. Until our next episode, bye for now.